I reckon you can probably hear me now. Thank you very much for mentioning that, Steph. Appreciate that. I reckon you can probably hear me now. Thank you very much. Tim Bennett is my name. Welcome to this stream from finder.com.au. A couple of technical issues we've just got to sort out before we can get our panel on. But today we're going to be talking all things travel. I've got a bit of housekeeping to do while we get things set up. So I will cover off that with you. First of all, you can watch this on Facebook as well as over on YouTube. So you've got a couple of different options. If you are on the Facebook channel, then I would highly recommend you please leave a comment, whether it's about us having sound or not, or whether it's simply to do with what we're going to be chatting about throughout this program. That is the place to go. The reason I said that is because we've got a little secret surprise, a little something that we'd like to get you involved in, which I'll tell you about in just a minute's time. Firstly, just a general point, I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today. And I want to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Now, I'm speaking to you from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us today. Now, there are a few different places from which people are joining us today. I don't have them all on me, but we'll get to that shortly. All right. There's a couple of people who I'm very much looking forward to having a chat to on this call, and that includes, and you'll meet them very shortly, Amy Bradney-George, who has been a money and lifestyle writer for over 14 years with a particular focus on credit cards for the past decade. She always finds ways to save money on travel and make it a little more sustainable. We're also going to be hearing from Angus Kidman. Now, Angus is an editor-at-large here at Finder. He's been an award-winning journalist for over 25 years, and more importantly, and perhaps this is the most important thing of all, he has lifetime gold with Qantas status. We're also going to hear from Stephanie Yip, and Steph has been a lifestyle and travel writer for over 15 years. She's visited 55 countries and lived in 3. The cheapest flight she's ever paid for is €7. I mentioned before that there's a couple of little bonus things, a couple of little things that you can be excited for in this particular stream, and one of them is that we're walking the talk in a way, if you will. We think that you should be able to save money on travel, and we're going to be picking our top 5 favorite comments or questions today during the masterclass, and we're going to be giving out over exactly $250 worth of travel gift cards in total. So I want you to pop your questions in the comments as they come up. Now, I am going to make a bit of a sort of a declaration, first of all, and that is simply... No, I'm back. Sorry, everyone who was watching, just to give you an idea, I was having a little trouble getting onto our Zoom, and so now... Here's the panel. Welcome. First of all, I've introduced you all on the stream, but I want to have a quick touch base with you eachly. Amy, it's lovely to have you on the stream. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Tim. Finally we're here.
We're finally in the same room. Angus, welcome.
Thank you. No one ever said earning points was easy.
No, I love that. Stephanie, lovely to have you here. Hello.
Hi, good to finally be here.
Now, I have a joke that I'm going to steal from Angus, which is something that I want to just very much direct at you before we go on. Whilst you may have flown with us before in one of these masterclasses, I have to cover the fact that the Finder Masterclass that you're about to watch is intended to be general advice. It'll give you tools, tips, and strategies that'll help you make better decisions. And although we're licensed and authorized, we aren't providing any form of financial, tax, or legal advice. So please consider your own situation and get proper advice before making any financial decisions. You need to consider your own individual circumstances. Nothing in today's session is financial advice. It is general in nature, and questions in general will be subject to this as well. So by all means, ask a question in the Facebook or YouTube chat, but keep in mind, we can only sort of answer so much. All right, now that I've got the preamble out of the way, now that I've got the panel here with me, let's kick off. Amy, what are some great ways to earn travel points?
Well, I think at the moment with the cost of everything being as high as it is, anything that you're already going to spend money on that you can earn points on is going to be great because you're going to get more points even though you're spending more. So travel is typically, I mean, it's typically the way that you earn points. That's why it's called frequent flyer points. So any flights that you're taking, hotels where you can enter your frequent flyer number, anything like that is going to earn you points. Credit cards also offer huge bonus point sign-up deals for new card holders. So you can sometimes you can get up to 150,000 bonus points by getting a new card and spending usually a sum of money in the first few months that you have it. And that is enough to redeem international flights in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and just to hit on that one, just very quickly, you just broke up a touch there, and I think we missed a little bit. You do generally have to spend a couple $1,000 normally in the first few months to get that bonus.
Yeah, it's typically around 3,000 up to about 5,000. I mean, it does vary between offers, but it's usually around that much in the first 3 or so months. There's a lot of cards now that also add on some bonus points if you keep the card for 12 months, meaning that you pay the annual fee potentially twice.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have a first year annual fee waiver.
Yeah. Anyway, continue. You're going on. There's some other ways to earn points that we might not have thought about.
So one that everyone has the potential to do if you've got a Coles or Woolworths near you is everyday rewards for Woolworths and Flybuys if you shop at Coles, Target, Kmart. You know, both of them have different partners, and they both earn with their partners 1 point per dollar. You can transfer Flybuys to Velocity. You get it's 1,000 Velocity points for every 2,000 Flybuys points. With everyday rewards, you can get Qantas points, and it's the same rate. So 2,000 everyday reward points, 1,000 Qantas points. So that's, if you're going to the supermarket, which we all have to buy food, that's a really easy way to get points for something that you do every day without going out of your way to earn them.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of points that Justine's made in the chat. And Justine, I want to mention these because we're actually going to get to these. The challenge is using those points on the flights that you actually want to use them on. I agree.
Justine, I think we all feel you on that one.
And of course, she just made the point as well that Flybuys and Velocity can line up. We are going to get to that as well. Amy, any other hot tips before we move on that are off the top of your head? We can hit back on this later on if we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing is that Velocity and Qantas, which are the biggest frequent flyer programs in Australia, they both have different partners that you can spend with. So it's worth going onto the websites and just checking what partners are there when you're planning to make purchases or you need to do some shopping and seeing what's available. The other thing I'd say is that with the supermarket rewards, Finder Research has actually shown that there's about there's about 15 million people missing out on frequent flyer points because they're not transferring the supermarket reward points over. So they're getting cash off their shop, and at the moment that's completely understandable. But if you do want frequent flyer points and you're not already getting them from the supermarket, this is a really good opportunity to kind of just check, because they both offer essentially kind of set and forget ways to transfer those points over.
Yeah, and
I
we'll
can see
talk
Gus nodding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sexy extension to that for the Qantas people is the everyday extras, which Woolworths has, which they introduced this year. And you pay $60 a year for that, but you get 10% off one shop a month, and it triples the number of points that you earn. So it literally pays for itself, and you get even more points. So I got quite excited when that came in that year. And I think for anybody who is, if that's where you're doing your regular shop and you're earning Qantas points, it is worth getting into that, because you are literally tripling those basic points you're getting from those activities, and you'll get the discount. So it really won't cost you anything.
Well, Gus, that's actually an interesting segue there, because what Justine mentioned is like using the points on the flight that you actually want to. So there's earning the points, and then there's using the points in the most effective way. Why don't you tell me, I guess, why this is even a question, and then how to optimize it from there?
Yeah. So, you can use your points for a bunch of things. You can use them for copy machines and gift cards. You can use everything. For $10. But there is no doubt that you get more value from your points if you spend them on travel generally. Like that's where the real return on investment is. So I always tell people the best way to spend your points is to use them on flights. Now, of course, in the last couple of years, that's been very frustrating advice at various points because we haven't had that option, but we do have that option again now. So I absolutely say to people who are seriously trying to get that value from their points, the best way to use them is on flights, but there's nuance within that. The big goal that everyone has is, oh, I'd love to get like a business class flight or a business class upgrade. We know that that gives you the biggest return, but it can be incredibly difficult to get. Like, we don't want to shy away from that. I think you have to be planning 12 months in advance if you want to have any hope of getting a business class or even a premium economy reward flight. And I think my advice to most people is you're actually better off thinking about what are the economy options where I'll be prepared to take that trip. You'll get a lot more choice and you can still get a really solid return on that, especially for some regional Australian trips. We think of, let's get a global trip. But I'm a big fan of saying there are some places you can go where you'll easily get a lot of value out of that and you'll find that availability. So I guess that's the message I always say to people is, it's lovely to have that goal of getting a business class flight. And if that's what you really want, make that your goal, but realize that you could get really good value from these points and get more flights if you're prepared to settle for economy more often and if you're thinking about Australian flights, not just global ones.
Yeah, it's
the
fun.
Other thing, I'll just
Oh, sorry, go on, Amy.
jump in. I was just going to jump in there and say also somewhere closer to home, it's really hard to get business class flights to the US or the UK or anywhere in Europe. But I have seen this year, business class flights to Fiji, for instance, less than 12 months out, like more kind of around the 4 to 6 months out. So they are out there, but they're just maybe not as far as you would like to travel business class if you're, unless you have kind of gold or platinum status.
No, but I think that's so interesting. It's the point I was going to make was it's always fun to work with Angus, especially because sometimes he'll just like join Zoom from like Uluru or something ridiculous like that. Justine in the chat as well mentioned that they're heading to the Gold Coast in a little over a week. Still need to book the trip, but definitely going to happen. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. Just quickly before we move on, though, I do want to just mention, please jump in the Facebook and YouTube chat. The Facebook chat especially sort of is where I'm looking. So if you want to jump over to Facebook, if you are in YouTube chat, I pinned a comment in the stream that just has the Facebook link as well. The reason I say that, though, is because, especially from the Facebook comments, we will be picking our 5 favorite, and we're going to be throwing out $250 worth of vouchers as a bit of a thank you for getting involved. So if you have any questions or comments, please whack them in there because we want to hear from you. Okay. I want to move on to Steph. Now, Steph, you've traveled to 55 odd countries, which is a couple dozen more than I ever have. Give us some ideas of how to get some great deals, flights, accommodation, trips, whatever you think is your hot tips.
Yeah, definitely. Well, is this time for a shameless plug to go to find the travel website?
Plug away.
So on the Finder website, you'll find a lot of deals. We cover everything from flights, hotels, car hire, holiday packages, and sometimes we get exclusives as well. So it's worth checking out. And while I'm there, it's also worth checking out if there are promo codes or deals. Even if you don't go through Finder, you can plug in through Google. If you know of a hotel chain or a flight or an airline that you want to fly with, look it up, see if there are any deals, or look for the word promo code and see if you can find a promo code to get a bit more of a discount on. Another good way to get deals is to look out for big sales events. This week, we've got Black Friday coming out, and some of the travel companies have already started with their deals. You can get up to 75% off hotels at the moment. And then there's Boxing Day as well. I traditionally kind of think that these are shopping events, but they really are an all-round deals event. So you can find a lot of travel deals that way. Another option I like to do is kind of look at aggregators. Aggregators are great for comparing prices and trying to find cheaper prices than, say, if you went to an airline direct. If you go through a travel agent, you never know, you can get an extra 5-10% off your flight price.
And just to clarify, an aggregator, you mean, I guess at one level, just a travel agent is an aggregator, but also what, like Expedia, Trivago, Skyscanners, those kind of companies?
Yeah, definitely. So Expedia, Skyscanner, there's also Kayak. They're great for having a look and seeing what other deals you can get as well.
Yeah, cool. Hey, I have a question for you, and this is completely unrehearsed, so please, I apologize for not mentioning. Are you an Airbnb or a hotel person?
I am a hotel person.
Oh, interesting.
Airbnb, but I don't like having to go through a person, right? I like the idea of knowing that what I'm going to get when I go there.
Yeah. I love seeing how other people live. Amy, Angus, do either of you have a different take on that?
Oh, well, I like the idea of Airbnb, but I'm really specific about what I will and won't book on Airbnb because I go for kind of the self-contained little granny flats, places that are on someone else's property that wouldn't typically be long-term rentals for people living in the area. And if that's not available, then I will look at hotels and traditional bed and breakfasts, just because I don't like the idea that a long-term rental has been taken off the market for holiday stays.
Yeah. I get that. Angus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very with Steph. I like hotels for the experience, and I also like them because for me they're also a loyalty play. So I tend to I've got decent status in a couple of those schemes, so I get better rooms. And just for me, it works out better location wise because I want things that are near airports or near train stations. Those tend to still be hotels. Very often, your Airbnb option assumes that you're going to go and hire a car, and people are doing that. That's great, but that's not me.
No, that's fair enough.
So I was going to say another benefit of Airbnb. So a reason that I do like it is that it's great for large groups because you've got the potential to book a whole house. If you have 5, 10, or 2 families traveling, it's great to just be self-contained like that.
Yeah, well, I do feel like here, not part of any of the status awards. You know, I'm not gold anything. I feel like I'm schlepping it here. I would love to hear from you in the Facebook comments or on YouTube. Please let me know. Are you an Airbnb person or a hotel person? I'm kind of keen to find out. Thank you if you've just joined us, by the way. This is a travel masterclass from Finder, finder.com.au. If you'd like to find out more about what we do, what we can help you save and make money on, head to finder.com.au. Steph, finder.com.au/travel. If you want to find out the best travel deals, is that the correct URL?
That's it, yeah.
That's it. Makes a lot of sense, I guess, doesn't it? All right. We had a comment which is kind of related to what we were just talking about. By the way, Stephanie says hotels. Donna says Airbnb. So currently 1 for 1 in the comments. Stanley made a point in the comments on Facebook. If you can't score reward flights, another consideration is getting Gold Star Alliance status with the new HSBC Star Alliance card, priority boarding and increased baggage allowance. That is one of the many cards on the market, I imagine. And Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit more about credit cards and travel, whether it's, rewards programs or just how to use them overseas? What's your thoughts?
Well, just on the HSBC Star Alliance, so that's actually the first airline alliance credit card in Australia. So it is kind of an interesting one to look at, but only if you're if you want that gold status, it is. I mean, I don't know of any other credit card in Australia that offers gold status instead of bonus points as an introductory offer. So it's a similar thing. You get gold status when you spend at least $4,000 in the first 90 days, which is very similar to bonus points. But I actually, when it launched, I wrote an article about it. And to get gold elite status with Singapore Airlines, you'd normally need to earn 50,000 elite miles through KrisFlyer in a year. In flight terms, that's equivalent to 2 business class flights between Sydney and London in a year, or in standard economy, 3 return flights from Sydney to London and a one-way flight between Sydney and Singapore. So you get, when you look at it like that, if you want that gold status, which does often give you access to those reward flights faster than if you've got just kind of the entry-level status, that is an option. But
that's pretty impressive.
Essentially, you still need the points to get the
reward exactly
flight.
Yeah. And just to double check though, who is Star Alliance include? Like what airlines does that include?
So it's actually a lot of airlines that aren't Australia. Like there's no Australian airlines in the alliance. So it's You've put me on the spot here. Chris Flyer is the big one. That like Singapore Airlines Chris Flyer. It's United. United Airlines is another one. Gus, I'm going to throw to you now. Air Canada.
Air Canada and New Zealand. So it's definitely. It's not as in Australia, we've tended to think about One World because that's the one that's Qantas is in. But if you're looking at that and saying it hasn't been away on the ground to make much use of Star Alliance, so it's very much about that international travel. But it's great. It is great. That card is one of the best new ways we've had for a while to earn into that, because that's always been harder to earn. Even if it's just with a single airline, like it's been very tricky. It's typically been you'd have to earn it in an Amex and then transfer it out through one of their schemes. It's just about being the only other option. So, it's worth considering. But I guess what I would say is that I think when the schemes are free to join, it's fine to join them all, but you really do need to concentrate on one. You need to pick a scheme and say, right, this is where my target is going to be and this is where I'm going to earn stuff. And that makes it tricky, I think, sometimes to bat the Star Alliance one. But if you're working for a company that's flying you to Singapore regularly, then it starts looking really, really sexy.
We will hit on that shortly. But getting back to using cards overseas. So actually, come and think of it, before we even talk about credit cards, how do you pay for stuff overseas, Amy? What's your go-to? Is it credit cards or is it some other approach?
I always have more than one. I always have more than one payment method with me. So one is always a credit card, because you usually need a credit card for hotels overseas. A lot of them won't accept, some of them will accept debit cards, but they won't accept any sort of prepaid card because they need that security. So it's usually a credit card. Some won't even accept cash. So always a credit card. I like the security that comes with that as well. If that money is used in, fraud, it's not my money. I always have a debit card with me as well, because I like to have access to my own cash and use it for withdrawing money. So I have local currency as well, because using a credit card, you'll get charged a cash advance fee and the cash advance interest rate pretty much straight away. So I would never use a credit card for that personally.
What about, so I'm going to Japan next year, for example, and it's still kind of a cash economy. Do you have any tips, say for me or for anyone else listening, but mostly for me, on the best way to get cash, so yen in this case, but overseas?
Yeah, look, I actually found that when I went to Hong Kong as well. It's a very cash-based location, and I actually wished that I'd gone and done the get cash in Australia to take overseas, because the fees that I was getting charged on my debit card to get the money out were quite high. And luckily I had a card that had no foreign transaction fees, which was going to be my next point, which is when you take a card, whether it's a credit card or a debit card overseas, make sure it doesn't charge a foreign transaction fee, sometimes known as an international transaction fee, because a lot of them charge 2% to 3%. Some charge 3.4%, which means that every time you're using it, you're getting that added on.
And I think this dives into, to extend on that. This is why another reason to have multiple cards, because I often find when I'm overseas, if I'm using a card, if I'm buying something expensive, like my big shopping indulgence, I might use my points earning card because I don't mind paying that fee because I'll earn a lot of points. But for all those little daily transactions, for all the things where I'm just buying a coffee or a cheap train ticket, that's where I want to use the credit card with the low rate. And unfortunately, I'm not aware of a card that does both. If you're earning points on it, it is generally charging you that. Amy might know an exception.
Look, actually, the frequent flyer Facebook points finder group that we have is great for tips around this as well. But there are very, very few credit cards that earn points in Australia that don't have a foreign transaction fee. Bank West has a couple, their platinum card range, and CommBank has a couple right at the higher end of their awards range as well. There may be a couple of others as well, but generally if you're earning points on a card, you will pay a foreign transaction fee. So my strategy is always to use the points earning card to book all the travel before I go, and then use another one that's got no foreign transaction fees when I'm over there.
There are, if you want to find more no transaction fees, well, actually there's a bunch in the Facebook chat that people have recommended, but also head on to finder.com.au/ just finder.com.au and find the credit cards portal. A lot of Amy's writing there will help you. One quick question before we move on here, though, because it's relevant. Justine actually asked a good question. Are traveller's checks now obsolete? I was watching Home Alone 2 the other night, and he dropped what looked like a bunch of traveller's checks, and it was like, oh, that's such a blast from the past. Do they even exist anymore?
Yeah, they're still a thing. I'm tempted to say sometimes they might be the option to look at in sort of even more far-flung places. Like I'm tempted. I know people have done it when they've travelled to Africa, for instance. It still might be an option you think about for some of those things. So there, but boy, I could not tell you what the rates were. I had to pick a good one because I've not thought about that.
And the tricky thing is, if you end up with some left over, you have to be really. You have to jump through hoops to get, money in a form you can use it once you're back in Australia. It's it's a lot easier now to kind of cash in foreign currency, but travelers checks, I think it's a little bit more difficult. And, if you don't have a lot of time, then, I would probably find them sitting in a drawer years later.
Yeah. Well, I just want to quickly welcome anyone who's just joined us. Thank you for joining in on our masterclass on travel this evening. I had a few other votes for Airbnbs, by the way. Just saying, I'm not alone here schlepping it along. But just a quick word up to anyone who is, to you who are watching now. None of this is financial advice. It is general only. So please, if you are thinking about traveling soon, which hopefully you are, because I know I've got it pent up a little bit. Make sure you sort of figure out what options are right for you. We are going to, try and give you as much insight as we can for the next half hour or so, but make sure you make your own decisions. Before we move on, there's so much sort of to get through, but we did get a couple of people in the Facebook chat who wanted to know about travel agents. And Steph, I'd love your thoughts on this. Are travel agents still relevant?
I reckon they are. Yes, it did go a bit quiet during COVID, and yes, the environment has changed, but travel agents are very much still relevant. They're great for bundling your holiday together, so you only have one point of contact if anything goes wrong, sort of flights and hotels and trying to rearrange everything. And travel agents also do have intel extra special discount that they can get. Because they do have those relationships with those airlines and with those hotels. So I definitely think it's worth pursuing. I know some people who love travel agents. They love the fact that they can just give them some direction and have everything organized for them. And some people might think DIY is going to be cheaper, and it could be, but then you're using all this time doing your own research, and you might like that, but some people might find it better, easier. Somebody else does all that for them and just lays it in front of them. So I definitely think there's a space for travel agents. And again, sometimes people deal through them.
Yeah, and I think people don't value their time enough, right? The amount of time that you spend on something does matter. I actually remember during COVID, I was trying to get back from Canada when Australia was kind of cagey on letting anyone in, and a travel agent honestly saved our bacon. When something kind of didn't go perfectly, when there were a few sort of changed flights, he was able to look after it completely, and honestly, it was incredible. So does anyone else have any thoughts on travel agents?
Look, I have to say, if you find a good travel agent, they are just the best. I think I have a 5-year relationship with one travel agent. She met me and my now husband before we were married, before we got engaged. She's helped us go all different kinds of places. And I'm one of those people that I do my own research anyway. I can't help but compare prices. So I'll go in with an idea of what I've seen elsewhere for prices. And she always comes out with these amazing savings. I think there was once when I had an idea of what I was expecting to pay, and it was $500 less and better flights with her. So I'm definitely a fan of travel agents, and just have to shout out Kayla, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I think just off the back of that, there's a nice relationship that you can have with travel agents too. My mum loves this one travel agent in the city. She always goes to her. She doesn't even think about doing her own research anymore. She just knows and trusts her, and she just has a wonderful relationship with that.
Yeah, and I think you can make good friends, even if it is a business relationship. I mean, I've got good friends at work. I imagine it's much the same. A couple of comments. Stanley mentions that travel agents are relevant, especially for complex itineraries, and that's a very good point. Nahian says it varies. The travel agent I've often found cheaper. Sandy Sue says I book tours every year, and the travel agent always beats any quotes. Tanisha, if I needed to change the flights, it's I just called the airline crying, so they change it. Okay, well, that's a bit of a hack.
Yeah, look, I've used that before as well.
There's also
Something
actually
goes wrong, you cry.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what a good travel agent does too. A great comment actually here as well. I think it had to do with the Airbnb point. Stephanie says, but have you ever slept in the luggage rack of a train out of Istanbul to Budapest? Now that's travel. Gus, I expect.
But I have slept on quite a few trains.
Yeah. Gus, you got any train stories? Got any safe for work train stories?
I've not slept on a luggage rack. That's one that I do need to add to my bucket list. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, trains are good, and I think trains are something Australians often forget about when they're planning travel.
That's true,
and it's worth it. And they are, you can in fact use and earn points on, like, even within Australia, the big luxury trips, the Ghana, the Indian Pacific, you can now redeem those Qantas points and earn points on them. So that's another example of a thing you think about. You think, oh, that hasn't got much to do with my frequent flyer life, but you can actually, weave the two of them in together. So.
Can I just segue that you can also go through other websites, say like Luxury Escapes, to book the Ghan if you're lucky and if that deal is around, and then you can also get Qantas frequent flyer points off that too.
Yeah, love that.
And if you pay with a credit card that earns Qantas points, you see where we're going with this.
I can see why people. I do know why people get sort of like really lost in this, because it seems like no one is a little bit into points. They're always like obsessed with points, or they don't know anything about them. Emily, if she's kind, might actually pop a link to the Points Finder Facebook page into the Facebook chat. The Points Finder Facebook page is a really good source of tips and tricks. It's a great community for people who are this obsessed with this particular pastime. Let us continue on. A couple of people in the Facebook group have also fessed up to being travel agents. So there you go. It's not completely unbiased. Let's just go through a couple of sort of quick tips. What should we never spend points on? Gus, do you have any thoughts?
Well, coffee machines, I say this, it's like a cliche, but it's really true that, like, that spending your points on that, look, it's better than letting your points expire. I'll give you that. Like, you don't want to let your points kind of completely disappear, but it's just, you're getting so little value from them in that way that I'd just say, buying things that way is not the best way to use your points. You're always going to get better by getting travel in some form out of them. So for me, it's just like, resist that as a way of spending your points. As a way of earning your points through those stores, that can sometimes be great. But I really, if people are at the point when you're panicked, if you're thinking, I need to get my points out, say you're in a scheme that is going to expire and you can't think of a way to top them up, then even then I stick with travel. Like, I've done this myself a couple of times, had a small number of points left with Chris Flyer, and just spent that on a hotel room, which is still a decent value, a better redemption than using a coffee machine.
Yeah. Amy or Steph, any thoughts on what you should never spend points on?
Look, I'm really of the mind that if you need something and you wouldn't normally be able to afford it, then, go ahead and use your points. But if you do plan to travel with those points at any stage, save them, try and keep it active, as long as you earn or use points within 18 months with Qantas and Velocity, you'll keep them. With Chris Flyer and some other international programs, they will expire. They have a finite amount of time. So yeah, like Angus said, it's better to use them on something than lose them.
Now, speaking of expiring, I have a question that I'm going to ask because I know there is going to be a lot of conversation about it. It's a bit of a spicy one. And then I'm going to jump out and add a Zoom room to our Zoom so that we don't get cut off. My question is Velocity better than Qantas? Discuss.
Oh, so that's a spicy one. That will keep us happily occupied while you're busy doing technical things.
Mic drop.
My job is, look, they're both good. They're both free to join. So on one level, I would say for Australians, you may as well be in both of them. If I was going, I will say that I think in the current climate, I think Qantas is a slightly better option because you have more redemptions for it, because it flies to more places. Virgin itself doesn't have a direct international network. It does have lots of international partners, but that makes it harder for it to open up lots of seats and do bonus offers and things. And just domestically, it doesn't fly to as many places. So I do think at the moment, Qantas has a slight edge. I think it's just, you've got more chances of redeeming it in interesting ways, I think, with Qantas than with Velocity. So for me, that makes it superior, but I'm fully trying to win in both of them. I haven't given up.
On the other hand, though, it can be, with everyone in Qantas trying to redeem all those flights and stuff, they go really quickly. So there may be opportunities, and that's why I think it would probably be good to be, if it's free to join, then to be a member of both, because you can sort of get points and have a look at the different rewards that are available when you're thinking of traveling, to see what seats you can get with which one, because you might find that sometimes Qantas doesn't have availability and Velocity does, and vice versa.
This is very true, and I've definitely had that experience. In fact, with business redemptions for domestic, the last year, I've done much better with Virgin than I have with Qantas. So there's scope for that. So they're both good schemes. I think if you compare them to the international ones, I think the fact that they both had to remain competitive, so they're both pretty generous. We don't have those awful expiries. If I compare it to almost anything else, I think Australians are lucky in that respect. So I think it is good to be in both, but I would always say it's good to have a goal within one. And if that goal is a particular destination, you may very quickly decide, okay, that's a goal that is only going to work with Qantas. You might decide as Velocity too, but I think,
and likewise, like where you want to leave from as well. I live in a regional area, and Virgin Australia doesn't fly to my nearest airport. So I'm kind of by default, earning more Qantas points on flights.
Yeah, I'm in the same bucket where I believe that why not have both if you can sign up for free and you can earn points? I earn most of my points through shopping. I don't really fly that much on Virgin. Well, I didn't used to fly that much on Virgin and Qantas. I was more of a Jetstar person, travel deals. And I shop at both Coles and Woolworths. So I can bucket up my points with both. So if you're like that, if you're not loyal to just one scheme, I think you can still earn the points in both respects. And what I tend to do is I will choose the flight that best suits me rather than the airline. So if Qantas has a flight time that's better than Virgin, I'll use my points there. But if I find a Virgin flight that I like better, then at least I have that option.
Well, it sounds like you had a spirited discussion while I was away, and I appreciate that very much. I want to get to some of the questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat. We've got about 20 minutes of this masterclass left, so plenty of time to ask a question and also to earn one of our $50 travel gift cards. There's still a couple left, so please jump in the Facebook chat. If you are on YouTube, there's a pinned comment that heads over to the Facebook. Would love to hear your questions, hear your comments. There's already some good ones, so I'm actually going to get stuck into those. And keep in mind that any feedback is general in nature only. Need to figure out your own sort of financial decisions based on your own circumstances. I say that because one of the questions that's come up a couple of times is which credit card offers the highest points? And Amy, I assume the question is it depends. So I'm going to let you go ahead and answer that.
Well, it does depend. I mean, it depends on what points you want to earn, and where you're kind of placing that in terms of, if you're looking at Qantas frequent flyer, Velocity frequent flyer, another frequent flyer program. I will say typically American Express credit cards do have the highest points per dollar rates, but you can find those top tier credit cards with with the big four banks and other banks as well. So I mean, it's really, that's why it's so good to go on and compare. If that question, did that question specify Qantas or?
I don't believe so. No.
Velocity. Yeah, because I mean, there's definitely you can get particularly with like the American Express Qantas Ultimate. That one has, I'm just pulling it up so that I make sure that
and of course, you can pull it up as well on finder.com.au. Head to the credit cards part of the website.
/ credit for dash cards, and then right in there.
So that one earns 1.25 Qantas points per dollar on most everyday spending. It's 0.5 points per dollar with government spending, but you get an extra point per dollar when you pay for eligible Qantas products and services. So like your Qantas flights when you're booking through the Qantas website, which means you're getting 2.25 points per dollar for that, plus Qantas points on the flight when you put your Qantas flight number in. So
it's pretty good. But I would always make the general point that for most people on an average Australian income, you're going to get a lot more points from the bonus offer than you are from your regular spending. You have to be spending a lot of money before. So while it's absolutely important to look at that earn rate, but I think for most people who are looking at this thing, what you want to be actively thinking about is how many of those initial bonus points I can get. And if you can just make the spending for that, most people are going to get more points that way than they are from what they actually do in the earning. So that's where you really want to, you want to look at that. And to throw in a dated reference, you kind of want to Linda Evangelista it and say, look, I'm not going to get out of bed for a credit card that's got a bonus offer of less than 50,000 points. I think if you're looking at something less than that, there's probably, no matter what time of year, there's probably something more competitive than that most of the time.
Especially when you consider that 1 point per dollar is kind of like a decent to good rate. A lot of them have lower than that. And so, with bonus points, if you've got even just a 50,000, which is kind of middle range bonus points offer, you'd have to equivalent spend $50,000 in a year on a 1 point per dollar card to get those points, as opposed to meeting, say, a $4,000 spend requirement. For some people that might be fine. But that does kind of put it in perspective.
Yeah. And just to back you up, Amy, a few people in the chat are also saying that they found Amex has been great for points in terms of the raw number of points per dollar. But it's, as you say, it's not always holding based on what you want to spend those points on. So it's important to sort of figure out exactly how you're going to use it.
And also you will find that some places they have the higher surcharge for Amex. And,
that's right as well,
And I mean, it's accepted in most places, but there's still sometimes I will come across, I have an Amex card and I'll come across, every now and then I'll come across a place that I can't use it, which isn't really a problem, but, it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Nathan says he's guilty of redeeming points for a toaster. But the last few weeks he's been obsessed with collecting points with a future trip in mind and have just applied for their first bonus offer credit card. Look, congratulations, Nathan. Everyone is very proud of you. A question that he asked, though, is traveling business really worth it? He's never done it. I don't think I've ever actually done it on a full trip either. So tell me, is business worth all the hype?
I feel bad. I did it on Sunday. So, look, business is like, what I will say is it's worth it, but you do want the trip to be of a certain length because, I think any kind of what I call an East Coast hop in Australia, you're just not going to notice the difference. You're not in the air for long enough to really take advantage of it and have that difference. So, if you're flying from Melbourne to Cairns, it starts looking good. If you're flying from anywhere on the East Coast to Perth, that can be nice. And of course, these are the ones where the freaking fly seats disappear. Let's not kid ourselves. They're the ones that people want. It's like, I think on an international, you really do notice the difference. Like, it's definitely the comfort factor is good, but it is, and it's a good value redemption. Like, so I think it's worth it when you can get it, but I'll go back to what I said at the start. I think for a lot of people, focusing on getting a redemption in economy that's more available is good, especially if you want to travel with your family. You might find one business class seat on something. The odds of you finding 2 business class seats on the same thing. And I remember friends of mine took their honeymoon and they flew to Europe business class using points, but they had to go on different days. They could not get on the same flight because they just couldn't get the seats. So sometimes that's the reality of what you face.
I think also asking, like, is business class worth it? If you're paying for it as well, it really depends on the prices that are available. And Steph, you'll be able to speak to kind of the travel deals that are around for business class. But I know when I was looking at flying to Europe next year in business class, it ended up being, I think it was going to be almost $20,000 for me and my husband. And we ended up getting flights that were more than half of that in economy, that were really great connections, really smooth kind of trip. And I just kind of went, I can't justify that money on business class. It would be lovely to fly long haul that far, but not for that price.
Steph, what kind of deals have you seen with business, and do you have any hacks in terms of how to get business on the cheap?
I have seen quite a few deals with business. So certain airlines, say like Cathay Pacific and Qatar, often have business class deals. As Amy said, to go to Europe, you're probably going to look at about $20,000 to get there and back. The sales you really do have to look at, again, Black Friday, Boxing Day sales are your best options.
Yeah. And a word of caution, something you want to be careful of when you're searching those business flights, and this is something that comes with aggregators a lot. If you see a super cheap business class flight from Australia to Europe, it's really high odds that at least one leg actually isn't in business. So you really need to look at that detail, because Australia is relatively underserved with these things, I've often seen a thing where it's like, okay, almost any airline will say, oh, it's a business class deal, and you think it's amazing. And then you realize, okay, the flight from Sydney to Hanoi is in economy, and then they bounce you up. And look, if the price, I'm not opposed to doing that in the right circumstances. If it's like a day flight that was in economy and then you have the longer leg that's going to be the night flight in business, if the price is right, that can be a good deal. But be careful with that, and be careful with that with points, because occasionally I'll see that with points redemptions, that not all the legs of the points redemptions are in the class you want. And that's when they'll still charge you the same number of points. So you do have to be careful with that one.
Speaking of things going wrong, maybe not quite in the same way that you were talking about then, but travel insurance. Now, travel insurance has been something that I feel like no one really thought about travel insurance nearly as much as they did over the last 2 years. And now it's suddenly the most important part about booking a trip. There are lots of questions about travel insurance in terms of what it covers, whether it covers COVID and the various costs that come from that. And that is a rather large question. And unfortunately, the answer is always it depends. But one of the questions that comes up all the time is travel insurance offered as part of your credit card as comprehensive as through your insurer, as a standalone? So does anyone have any thoughts on that to begin with?
I, of course, have thoughts writing about credit cards so much. And the answer, as you said, it depends. Yeah. But I mean, we had a look earlier this year. There's over 30 cards now that offer comprehensive travel insurance that includes some cover for COVID-19 related claims. So obviously in the world that we're living in, like those sort of policies that are giving you that comprehensive kind of cover, you can look at them next to standalone policies and decide if that cover is what you're after as well. I would always look at the two side by side. But there is some really, really good value credit card comprehensive international travel insurance policies available. So it's definitely something to consider if you already have a credit card or you're looking at one as one of the features.
I work in insurance here, and one of the things that in the early days happened was that credit cards often wouldn't cover COVID, but that wasn't just credit card insurance. That was just a lot of the insurance coverage. It just hadn't sort of had it built in yet. And I think, and I may be wrong about this, so don't take my word for it, I think it might have been Fast Cover was the first standalone insurer to include COVID coverage of some sort. And when that happened, it was quite a big deal. It was a watershed moment because it was the only insurer that was doing it. Now, it seems that everyone's sort of caught up in a way. Feel free to jump in if anyone else has some more relevant experience, but my intuition is that the standalone insurance schemes can often give you a bit more customization in terms of what you're covered for. I may be wrong about that because I haven't been a big credit card guy.
You can get some more extensive options, and certainly that can work if you're in one of these categories where you're older, you've got complex medical, but there's not zero in the credit card ones. They do give you the option to specify, okay, these are the kind of activities I've been doing, and sometimes you can pay to extend that cover. I've certainly seen that.
It's the same with pre-existing medical conditions. There are some credit card insurance policies that will give you the option of making kind of having that assessment to see whether you'll be covered for your pre-existing condition, but some that also blanket kind of don't really give you that option. So like any insurance policy, it really depends.
Yeah. Insurance is complex, unfortunately, which doesn't make it easy to recommend. All right. I'm just going to have a quick run through. Hopefully, maybe we can do some quick fire ones. This one's a nice, easy yes or no, I'm sure. Is it true that you don't get points when you purchase gift cards? Yes or no?
Yeah, generally, yeah, things like that, because they look like they're treated as similar to a cash advance. They're not the same kind of thing. So in most cases, you won't get that. Only quick exception, I know this is supposed to be a fast answer. I look at, when I'm buying gift cards for people as gifts, I look for when you get bonus points through supermarkets, and that can be a useful way of topping you up. But though on those ones, you'll get the bonus points, you won't get any points for the actual face value of the card, though.
Yeah. I remember you always get very excited when, is it the Woolworths one that comes up where you can buy Netflix subscriptions or something like that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. If you're paying for Netflix, pay for it using a gift card that you've earned points for. In fact, that works for Netflix, it works for Stan, it works for Binge, it works for, there's a bunch of them. So like, everyone's got streaming services. Earn some points on your streaming services, people.
Gus, while I've got you, you mentioned the tripling Woolworths points. Can you just go over that again? Someone asked how that process worked again.
So this is Everyday Extra, which is this opt-in scheme you can do for Everyday Rewards. You pay, I think it's $7 a month, or it's $59 a year. It's quite discounted if you get the annual one. In return for that, you earn you get triple points on most things. You also get 10% off one Woolies shop a month and one Big W shop a month. So if you work that out, if you've done a shop of more than $70 once a month, you can get the cost of that back, and then you're earning triple points on top of anything else. So if you opt into some offer that says, hey, you're getting 10 times points on this category, you'll get 12 times points, because they'll get the base points. They'll still give you the 2 extra ones. So I really do think if you are earning any points if you're shopping at Woolies with any regularity, whether it's your sole supermarket or whether you're Steph and you're doing a bit in both, I absolutely think that that's worth getting into. And I have to say, the Flybuys equivalent scheme is nowhere near as good. Doesn't do that points leveling up, and is much more about getting home delivery. So not in the same class, I'd have to say.
Fair enough. Here's one for Steph. Not really a quick one, but let's see how we go. I'm moving to Australia from Europe. Do you have any tips on which airlines to choose and how early to buy tickets? Hoping to come in January or February, which might be a pretty short timeline now, but with that in mind, what would you think?
Yeah, it's probably a short timeline. You're also coming during peak season, so I would have recommended trying to fly into Australia during off-peak, so during winter. But you can still get some last-minute deals. In terms of airlines, from Europe, that's from Europe to Australia you're moving, is that correct?
That was the understanding, yeah.
From Europe to Australia, usually the deals that I get on either on Emirates or on Virgin Australia from that way. But of course, you're doing some code share. When you're coming in terms of tips, probably the earlier the better if you are leaving it to January, February that you're traveling. It is a peak season, so if you can travel late January, early February, you're going to miss that summer season, which is the big block, which is when prices tend to surge.
So push it later in February would you?
Yeah.
Into February, yeah, because February, March are off seasons in Australia. And also set up flight alerts if you haven't already done that already. If you look at Skyscanner, if you look at Kayak, you can set flight alerts and you can actually see, or you'll be notified when prices drop. And that way you can jump on those cheap flights when they come in.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd add to that is if you're prepared to suffer a bit, the cheapest flights you'll find are the ones that have got the 12-hour layover. And I know for a lot of people if saving money is your big objective, there are some good deals that are had. Typically, those are the ones that route through Asia. That tends to be where those long haul stopovers are. And sometimes you might find that you can, even if you throw in the cost of a transit hotel, it's still a lot cheaper. So that's another option to think about.
And I would say, and this is not just because Crazy Rich Asians is a great movie, but a 12-hour layover in Singapore is actually a really good opportunity to see Singapore. It's a good time.
I was going to mention, if you're going on a budget carrier, you can actually catch a scoop flight from, say, Berlin or from Athens over to Singapore, and then from Singapore come down to...
Yeah, I did the Athens, Singapore, Sydney, and I'd never been to Singapore, and I think it was about 19 hours, and it was this ridiculous self-guided day tour. It was great. I had a good time.
The airport actually gives you free tours as well, but you have to get to that store at a certain time.
Yeah.
But Changi Airport is, it's magic, right?
You can spend several hours in Changi and be quite entertained anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. A question here about expiry and points. So has that changed recently? I feel like I remember something about that. What's the current situation with expiry and frequent flyer points? How long do you have them? How long can you keep them for?
So typically, and Amy alluded to this earlier in the discussion, so for the two big ones in Australia, it's activity like earning or spending at least every 18 months will keep your points in good stead, so as long as and that doesn't have to be from flying. So this is again why the supermarkets are so important. If you're doing those supermarket conversions, that will keep you active. As every scheme does differ. Certainly KrisFlyer, I think, has one of the nastier rules because your points have a fixed lifespan in them. So you do need to be across the rules for that. But in terms of the two big Australian ones, it is and that there was the change. The only change in those recently, go back a couple of years. I think one of them went from 24 months to 18 months, and I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. But now, they're aligned. But generally speaking, you shouldn't have. And this is another good selling point for having a credit card that earns points, because then they will automatically convert, even if you're not shopping at high enough volume. So I think it's so frustrating when I hear people say, "Oh, my points expired," because it is an easily avoidable problem, I think. So, but I would still be checking your points every month. Sorry.
Even if you don't have, say, enough time to sign up for one of those grocery schemes or a credit card, you can just buy something like if
you have enough points to make a redemption.
Exactly.
The other thing you can do if you're really worried about not being able to, like, if say you were moving overseas and you didn't think you'd be able to earn or redeem points in that time, you could set a calendar reminder and just make it like 2 weeks or so before that expiry is going to come up. I mean, you might get email alerts anyway, but you can set a calendar reminder and just go onto the website, look at what partners are there and see if there's anything that fits with what you're planning to do, so you can earn points and keep it active.
Yeah. And if you're going overseas, transfer them to a family member. You can do family transfers to Qantas or what. So if you generally don't think you've got a use for them, chances are you've got a relative who might be happy to have them.
Yeah. And actually, I didn't realize how easy it was to transfer points until just recently, because I was about 3,000 points shy of 2 flights to Canada. And I just said to my mother-in-law, "Hey, can I borrow 3,000 points?" And they were there in like half an hour, and it was great. So it's definitely doable. Couple of good comments here just in terms of keeping those points going. Nathan mentions the Qantas Health app is a great way to keep the points active. Of course, there are plenty of additional ways to earn points through health insurance and whatnot that are probably a little bit much for today. A couple of good points about just being automatically converting your everyday rewards cards, I think it is, to Velocity, or it might be Flybys to Velocity. Either way, that way again.
Flybys to Velocity, everyday rewards to Qantas. Yeah.
There we go. Cool. But if you swap at both, as often as they swap, then they will keep them active. Now we are going to go over just a touch, which I have no problem with on account of we were a little bit slow to start. It is a travel masterclass. I mean, is that not normal, as Gus has said to me in the past? So closing remarks. I'm going to give you each 60 seconds. Give me your best tip. Give me your best idea. Amy, I'm going to start with you because you're on my left.
Oh, no, don't start with me.
Nah, that's it. I can't.
Look, I've got it. Look, I would say, being someone that writes about credit cards, look, the frequent flyer credit cards and rewards credit cards, a lot of them do have hundreds of dollars annual fees. When you're looking at them, consider the benefits and the features that you're going to use, and you can weigh them up. Find it actually has a points value calculator, so you can get a quick estimate of what your points are worth and compare that to the annual fee. But there's all kinds of other benefits like travel credit you can get with some cards, lounge passes, so think about whether you're going to use them and whether that annual fee is worth it.
Yeah, and Google, find a points value calculator and that'll come up, I believe.
Yes.
That's a really cool little tool, actually, that one. Steph, 60 seconds, hit me.
Oh, I've already mentioned Googling for promo codes and sales. So I would say sign up to newsletters. Sign up to membership programs as well. A lot of flight, a lot of hotel have, and a lot of like travel agencies, say like Expedia, they have membership programs where you can earn points when you book through them, and you can get free flights or free accommodation, most likely free accommodation, by booking through them and earning those points and redeeming them at a certain point.
Yeah, great.
And sign up for Finder's flight sales email.
Yeah, I was actually going to say,
deals.
yeah, no, and finder.com.au if you'd like to find out any more about pretty much anything we've talked about. There's a page on it. Angus, 60 seconds, hit me.
All right, so an extra one on that list of things not to spend your points on that I should have mentioned earlier. I did not support. Don't use your points to pay for the carrier charges on a flight because it massively lowers the overall value you're getting out of them. So typically, you are much better off. Use the points to pay for the flight, and if there's extra carrier charges, which there will be, you're nearly always better off paying that directly because the value you get from that, you can literally halve or quarter the overall value you're getting from your points. So think of it as free flights, but there's still a couple of associated charges, and just be aware of that when you're setting your goals, because I think people go, obviously great, now I've got the flight completely free, and it's like, yeah, but you spent nearly as many points on the taxes as you did on the flight. That's not the best way to get out of it.
Oh, that's some fascinating stuff. All right, cool. Look, and the other thing I would say is, as well as just going to finder.com.au, head to the Points Finder Facebook page because it's a really cool little community there. If you're spending time on Facebook, which, assuming you're watching this stream, you probably are, unless there's a few people on YouTube. So, if you use Facebook, head on over because it really is a great community, and we update it, fairly often with good flights, deals, and excellent deals that you might not find if you are not quite as plugged in as Steph is. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. If you had any questions, I hope they got answered. And if you do have any other questions, just chuck them on the Facebook page. But we do have people watching that, and just ask, and we'll probably have an answer for you in a fairly quick turnaround. Please don't forget to make the most of your money at Finder in general, finder.com.au. You can download the app as well. It's a great little budget tracker and also helps you keep an eye on your credit score. It's possibly the best credit score app I've used, but I'm super biased, so really don't trust me at all. Thank you very much to Amy. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Tim. You've been an excellent host.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Angus, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And Steph, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. We have these fairly often, so please keep an eye on the Facebook and YouTube feeds to find out the next time we have a masterclass. Again, thank you so much for everyone for getting involved, and we'll see you next time.